Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying back. In the last few years, financial companies have been partnering and collaborating with the new age fintech companies far more aggressively. In the partnership model, banks and the finance companies have opened their APIs and adding different layers to their operations. They're not just limited to performance of the banks or the finance company, but they're also looking for seamless customer service far more aggressively. Cashfree, which is also backed by India's largest bank, State Bank of India, has partnered with many top BFSI companies. In fact, it processes over 60,000 payouts per minute, and it has seen 200% growth in financial year 2021 in the bulk dispersal product payouts. In this session, I'm going to explore the various aspects of API in fintechs with the founder of Cashfree. But before we begin, let me suggest you to please post your questions, feedback in the comment box on your right side, and also share your thoughts on the social media using the hashtag ETBFSI CXO. So let me just begin with Akash Sinha, the CEO and co-founder Cashfree. Akash, glad to have you on this show.
Thanks, Amol, for inviting me. Excited.
So thank you, Akash. So to begin with, Akash, I would like you to tell us in a far more meaningful manner, how is the API actually changing the whole financial ecosystem?
See, Amol, Cashfree we are one of the earliest company in the API space when it comes to fintech as a segment. Like APIfication is around for a long time. Right? We already have seen that in telecommunication, in commerce, in advertisement. But finance is a segment where this APIfication has got slightly later, right? And still India is slightly ahead when I look at the global market, right? But today, if you look at these challenges, if you look at the why API is needed, I'll drive 2 points. One is there is a big shift in the consumer behavior. Like today, as a consumer, I want things to be done across the channels, right? I want to do things at my mobile, at my PC, or even I want to work in a branch and get my things done. Second, I want to get real-time update about whatever action I'm taking, whatever things happening with my financial. So these two larger consumer requirements are making banks or financial institutions rethink how do they deliver their services, right? Or how do they communicate their service updates again? So that is the primary need, and we have seen few banks adopting to this demand in a good way, right? So they are trying to revamp their internal system. They're trying to structure the data in such a manner so that they can deliver it through APIs, right? And also these financial institutions have to develop APIs internally too, right? So today when a customer walks in or say customer places a request with a bank to get XYZ done, right? Say you want to get a loan. So these banks have to talk to 10 departments internally. Right? I'm just taking 10 as a number, but they have to talk to multiple departments internally. If those processes can be moved to API, then you can, end of the day, give faster response back to the customer. And this customer can request such kind of demand from any kind of channel, right? I can open my mobile and place this channel. I can open my desktop and place this channel. And same thing we have seen happening in the payment space for quite a long time. But recently, we are seeing a lot of this banking and financial services coming to this API world. And that's where we see fintechs being very aggressive in the market, right? Today, we have APIs for, not just for payments, right? The API for risk mitigation, API for KYC, API for loan. And very soon, we'll have API for insurance, stock broking, or any kind of service, any kind of financial service which customers want to use.
Okay, noted your points, Akash. Can you also tell me your experience, or can you share some of the case studies? Because I do understand globally the API has become a far more integral part with the BFSI companies. I still remember 3 years back when I was doing a show or a webinar on the web API. Not many people knew about it, but in the last 2 years they are adopting it far more aggressively. So could you share any case study, any successful case study that you have with any BFSI company in terms of partnerships, and also along with that, if you could add what are the benefits of the partnerships, how the partnerships are happening, and also add what are the changes or challenges happening over there.
We work with very diversified set of companies, right? I'll be having multiple use cases to share. I can take example of companies we work in the insurance space, right? Before these guys were processing the claim on their own, and they're doing the payouts to their customers on a defined interval, right? Say maybe on Sunday, Monday, or they didn't have a very defined faster time. But after using Cashfree payment APIs, they can disperse the claim to their customers in almost real time. And this helped them increase their customer delight, help them improve their customer experience in a very significant way. Plus, we have been working with a lot of NBFC lending companies, right? They use our verification APIs to verify customers' data in real time. You don't have to wait just to get verified by a company. Right? The moment you enter your PAN detail, your like bank details, these companies can verify your identity in real time, and they can directly jump and process your credit scoring. And once this scoring is done, they can again use Cashfree payment APIs to disperse loan to you within minutes. Right, so all these APIs are helping companies in lending, insurance, and even MF space give a much better user experience to their customers. Right? If you talk BFSI in general, right, I think you must have seen that over the last 1 or 2 years, a lot of companies, especially in lending insurance, are coming to online space, right, for the first time. And new companies are primarily being online first company, right? They're not even trying the offline space. Right? The prime goal is to let's go in the online, let's be in the internet. And there are plethora of APIs to use. And these APIs are helping these companies to release their services much faster way. Right? I don't have to depend 3 months or 4 months just to build a single product. I can integrate 10 APIs, aggregate them in a very user-friendly way, and start reaching out to the customers in the market.
So Akash, could you also highlight, you mentioned partly, but could you elaborate more in terms of the challenges or major obstacles that happens in the partnerships? I'm sure your experience will be really helpful to a lot of BFSI companies who are going to partner with the fintechs.
See, one of the challenges we've seen is the technological readiness. Right? That is pretty prevalent across companies who have been around for a significant amount of time. Upstream companies who are starting today, they are thinking about it from the day one. But let's talk about the companies who are in the industries for past 10 or 15 years, right? So a lot of their data may not be digital in the first place, right? They may not be following very modular structure internally, right? So they might be having one team doing 10 kind of activities. So to become very API first they have to define delimitation internally. They have to define which module or which department will do what, and then try to bring the services on the internet layer or bring API there. And for that they have to first migrate their data. They have to decide the communication layer, and lastly they also have to focus on the security of these API, right? Because now you're moving away from human intervention to machine, right? And you have to make sure entire data is protected, entire communication is protected, so that you don't end up losing consumer data and the trust of the consumer. The challenge around technological complexity, right? Security. And third is overall, like focus of the organization, right? If you want to do it in a serious fashion, then you have to put it as a KPI. You have to push people to focus more about data management, security, communication, right? So these are challenges we have seen across companies in BFSI who wants to use API, but they may not be ready to consume APIs, on their own, right? So in my opinion, there has to be focus, right? And people have to believe by getting on this API bandwagon, I can improve my customer experience, increase scale for my service usage, and make my services more and more accessible.
Okay, noted your point. But as we see the emergence of APIs, and more banks or finance companies opening their APIs, what is your perspective in terms of how API-led business models are evolving in the country?
API-led business models could evolve in two ways, right? Suppose we tie up with financial institutions like banks. So today there are few banks who have built APIs of very basic functionality. Right? I mean they've done a good job. They're trying to just give a starting ground for the companies. So fintechs today can start from there. They can get this basic vanilla APIs from the bank. Right? They can now start from the consumer experience perspective and try to add layers on top of these APIs. Right? Suppose after this NBFC AA guidelines coming out, right, you can start accessing data from the banks. You can start accessing financial data of the customer from the bank and financial institution, right? But as a fintech company, I can still go and do analytics on top of it, right? I can present the data in such a structured manner so that it becomes easier for the end consumer to take action on those data. Right? Bank will simply tell us, this is the API, you get the bank statement of the user. Now, as a company, I can start sorting that data out, right? I can tell the end user that this guy is spending, say, 30% on the e-commerce, like 20% on medi-exchange, 50% on travel. And now you as a lender or an insurer, you decide what you want to do with this data. So there's a big scope for fintechs. They can partner with banks, financial institutions, take their APIs, and then try to build in a layer so that it becomes easier to scale or easier to distribute this API in the wider market. Right? So where I think Cashfree is a very classic example for that. We are actively working with very good technical banks. We're using their APIs, but we're also bringing the demand of the market in perspective and building layers so that we can distribute it in a very high skill and high speed manner. Right? So you have to innovate on the integration layer. You have to innovate on the security layer. You have to innovate on the risk and fraud mechanism. Right? The moment you put API out, APIs are not intelligent on their own. Right? It can get abused very fast. So you have to put a checkpoints, you have to put anomaly detection, you have to use machine learning so that you weed off any kind of noise use, right? I mean, someone shouldn't exploit it. So these are the opportunities for a fintechs, and they have to do good amount of work to be successful if they want to partner with banks and financial institutions.
Right, that was truly meaningful, Akash. But tell me something more about the areas where the demand for the API is really high. Obviously, payment and lending has become two pillars of the fintech and the whole BFSI ecosystem. But I'm sure the need of API is in far more sectors even beyond payment and lending. So, what are the other areas where the API demand that you see is far more aggressive?
I think various segments have a various kind of demand. Take example of e-commerce company or any kind of hyperlocal company, right? So hyperlocal companies onboard on-demand delivery boys, on-demand vendors on the platform, right? And imagine these guys are not coming from a banking ecosystem, right? So you still need APIs so that you can create bank account for these guys faster. You need APIs to give them some kind of prepaid instrument faster so that you can pay their incentive into their wallet. There's other than payments and lending, we have scope for all the issuing APIs, right? You can issue bank account, issue wallets, right? Plus, I'll be slightly more technical here, right? I mean, if you're building a fintech app, you also need ledger management API, right? Because you have to make sure how much you have to know how much deposit customer is making, how much they are withdrawing, right? So you need a ledger management API. And if you're running a B2C company, right, you need to issue a GST compliant invoice to your customers after every purchase. So you need an invoicing API. And say you're onboarding sellers or customers on the platform, then you also need a KYC and risk management API, right? Because you cannot do these things in-house. So there are a lot of scope in the fintech API. So fintech APIs, today they started with a core payments, core banking API, but in the future they're going to cover all these adjacent spaces which are important to even serve the core services. And that's where your risk KYC, your fraud mitigation, your invoicing, your ledger, right? Your risk management, your anomaly detection, right? You have to be very mindful about anomaly detection and usage of an API. Then things around rate limiting. So all this becomes part of not just fintech API. This will kind of fintech OS in the future, right? So if companies can get access to fintech OS, they can launch fintech products very fast. And that's where the ecosystem is approaching, right? If you ask me today, we see a lot of companies, a lot of good companies building this fundamental fintech APIs and helping all this e-commerce platform, even new banks, right, to build right product for their customers even today.
Okay, but you spoke about the technical changes, and sometimes those are challenges as well because the fintechs comes with a new brain, and the existing companies follow some cultural challenges in terms of the shifting. So my question to you here is who benefits more? I know it's very tricky and difficult to answer, but who benefits more? Because ultimately fintech cannot go on its own. They have to partner with the banks and the large finance company, and finance companies have also realized that even they can't go far if they do not partner with the fintechs. So who wins the war? Who benefits the more?
I think both the party benefits. It's very hard to quantify who benefits more. I think someone who benefits more is someone who is trying to be more and more innovative, right? You have to be open, right? You have to be trusting the fintech partners. And you have to build what the consumer needs end of the day, right? Suppose I, as a company, right, able to share my consumer data with all the third-party apps. And the moment a consumer goes to third-party apps, right, so that third-party app will tell me if you have bank account with this bank, then I can give you service in 15 minutes. If you have bank account in Y bank, then I can give service in 24 hours. Now, as a consumer, what will I want? I want faster gratification, right? So I'll go with a bank which is letting me access a financial service in 15 minutes. So that in turn will, increase the traction for the bank in the mind of consumer, right? So as a practical consumer, say if I open my account with this bank, then I can access financial services at a much faster pace. I can access them in real time. And end of the day, that bank is winning. That fintech is anyway playing the role of distributing it in the market. But end of the day, if you're using your core services, if you're sharing your user data or helping other companies make your user data, then you as a financial institution winning end of the day in a larger sense, right? Obviously, as part of value chain, there are many players who are going to win. But if you look at their level, right? If you look at, say, there are 100 financial institutions, right? So the financial institutions which are being open, which are being supportive of the fintech ecosystem, I'm sure they will have a higher growth rate compared to ones who are not following this.
So I have one more question here, and the question is, what has happened is banks or the finance companies have also realized that digital is the only way. Mm-hmm. And in the pandemic also, they have been investing a lot specifically into digital, and in some or the other manner, they're calling themselves a tech company, but not a bank or a finance company. So my question to you is, fintech wanted to become a bank, and now bank wants to become a fintech company or a tech company. do you see a time or a future where banks may not need a fintech company because bank is a fintech company, and then what will be the future of fintech in that way?
Yeah, more. I mean, to answer your question, we already have digital banks coming around, right? You have
Right.
banks without any branch, without any physical presence. So that change is happening. But if you look at markets like India, so today banks have plethora of services, right? It's not easy to digitize all these services at a very fast pace, right? So we still have pretty decent window, right? I mean, it's a window like 10 to 12 is a window when this kind of convergence can happen in a very perfect way. Right. Till then, I think if you start putting that risk in the mind of people, then everyone will stop moving in that direction. The right way to is let's try to digitize one service at a time. Right. There are hundreds of services, financial services in the market. Let's do a good job in payments. Let's do a good job, things are issuing, lending, and then see if we can eradicate it. Obviously, by that time, right, I think fintechs can evolve in a different kind of entity, and banks can be more like tech company. But we still have a long way to reach there, right? Today, I mean, banks can start digitizing one of their services, but these guys have to change their DNA, right? I mean, have to start thinking in the way of how can they be more nimble, more iterative. And banks were nimble and iterative, and they're going to have a higher market share down the line. And fintechs are also evolving, right? Fintechs are good in understanding consumer rate. They're adding the intelligence. I can take one example, right? We use a lot of APIs from banks around payment dispersal, right? So banks have done a good job. They've given us a pipe, and we can send that data to them whenever we want. But the challenge is when banks go and sell these APIs to other businesses on their own, right? So these businesses can make mistake, right? Suppose an account of business gets hacked or their infrastructure get hacked, right? So when these businesses send request to the bank will treat everything as a genuine request, right? You tell the bank send 1 lakh rupees to XYZ account through API, bank will honor it because they see it as coming from that guy's infrastructure. So someone has to create a rate limit in between. Someone has to detect these kind of anomalies in real time, right? Where Cashfree is playing a bigger role, right? Just give a very simple example. Suppose there's a business who doesn't send any money on Sunday. And the moment we see this guy trying to send 10 transactions on Sunday, we feel something is wrong and we directly go and block it. And we ask them to confirm this manually, right? So even though banks build all these technical solutions, market demand will change very fast. And it's very hard for, very large organizational banks to keep up with the market demand. So that's where I feel fintechs will be around, even though banks become fully technical, down the line.
Okay, I think that's a meaningful thought and what you can say, good future perspective, Akash. But often when I speak to banks or the CIOs or CDOs of top banks or something like that, obviously they like the fintechs too. They're partnering with fintechs, as we discussed that in a far more detailed manner some time back. But the major complaints which they have is the scalability. Most of the fintechs do not have that scalability. Since you have achieved some level at your space, what is your suggestion why fintechs actually fail in building the scalability? Or if I tweak the question and if you want to answer in that way, how should fintechs actually build scalability? Because the demand from the BFSI companies is going huge, to take the support of the fintechs to scale up the whole ecosystem.
Right. I think places where fintechs fail, if they go after problems which may not be large enough, right? I mean, if you have to build a large fintech company, you have to really go after problems which are critical and which give access to a very large market to you on the day one, right? So that's where fintechs have to be slightly smarter in choosing the game they want to play, right? So market understanding is important. Banks are ready to give all the infrastructure support, but you as a fintech, if you don't understand the market well, then your business model will not work for a long time. Right? You take example of it, right? Banks also do this deposit business. And tomorrow fintech start saying, you come deposit money with us, I'll give you this interest. Just as an example, right? There might be companies doing it. But here you are directly compete with a bank, right? You're not giving something superior than banks, what banks can provide. In this case, I as a customer, I'll be preferred, go to the bank in the first place rather than coming to you as a fintech. So fintech has to give a superior experience, superior service to the customer. And that's way for them to stay reliable, stay relevant. Otherwise, it's very hard for them to differentiate with the banking ecosystem in general. Because banks have a good trust, they have good connect with the customer. And if your servicing is not superior compared to what banks are providing, it's not easy for you to scale up that fast. So that's why banks are also choosing in terms of when they pick up a fintech as a partner. They see what more on top of what I've built. And that makes sense, right? That's how we can grow the ecosystem. Otherwise, we'll just have a lot of clones in the ecosystem, and the ecosystem will not grow on actual level.
Okay, okay. Noted that point, Akash. One more and important question. Again, we partly discussed it, but if you could highlight this more specifically, is how do you see the future of fintechs, future of APIs going ahead? What kind of demand do you see in next maybe 2 to 3 years? Because we have seen an exponential demand in last specifically 1 to 2 years, though the fintechs are growing in last 4 or 5 years, but in last 1 year, they have been seen great partnerships. So how do you see, the whole future of API fintechs in next 2 to 3 years, according to you?
I think India's ecosystem going through a very good innovation phase. I think we are coming with very bright entrepreneurs, very bright founders, or even very very bright business people, right? Who are coming with great ideas and they have good understanding of the market. And to help them bring their idea to product in a faster pace, we need good support of fintech APIs. Like without that, things slow down significantly, right? If you have to kickstart, say, your investment app or investment management app, and if you don't have APIs for this, supporting activities, then you'll end up spending a lot of time in just solving for that problem. For me, fintech APIs are very crucial to grow the ecosystem. If you want to see, say, 1,000 great companies after 3 years, then you have to invest in fintech APIs today, right? We don't have to find customers for that API now and then, right? Because once the APIs are there, then people start thinking on top of it. Right? That is the thing which a lot of people, miss. A lot of banks, financial institutions, they come back saying, you tell me if there's a demand for this API, then I'll build it. But that's not how this ecosystem works. You first and go in the market. I have these APIs. Now you start thinking about the idea. And I'm sure, you'll get a lot of hundreds and thousands of good ideas once we tell them what is possible. Right? The challenge with fintech is, unless you know what is possible, there's no point even thinking about it, right? Because it's not a technical solution we are going to build. We can only build what is feasible as per the regulatory comfort, as per the compliance, and map it with the demand in the market, right? So every participant has to build right fintech APIs. They have to put it, telling these are the APIs in the market, right? There are use cases which I believe you could do, but you're also free to think about more ideas, more use cases, and then build products on top of it. Right, so the things I mentioned about, right? I mean, there's good demand for insurance. I mean, there should be APIs for insurance, APIs for loan, APIs for MF, API for stock. Obviously, API for payment, lending, whatever we have been doing so far, right? Plus API for tech registration, KYC, risk, fraud. So we need all the plethora of fintech APIs in the market to enable next 1,000 companies to be successful in this industry.
Okay. Allow me to add one more, maybe a cross question here on a global perspective. In fact, this question has a reference with the chief economic advisor who spoke at our event in the morning. Okay. And his concern is though the BFSI sector is going far more aggressively, the BFSI companies are not looking at global level. In fact, the SBI is also, not that big compared to the global banks, whereas Chinese banks are, ruling the world with top 5 numbers. My question to you, Akash, is on maybe I would like to understand with this background, what kind of scope do you see for fintechs in the global market? Do you see that Indian fintechs will have a great scope and great market at global and foreign countries as well?
I'd like to, segregate my answer in two parts. One is when you talk about a scale up local fintech and financial institution, the answer for me is Indian market is still very untapped. Right? If you just look at insurance alone, the coverage is like what 2 to 3%. Right? So look at even public market investment. Right? I mean less than what 2 CR people participate in that. So coverage is very low even in domestic market. If you are expecting large coverage, then we have to increase the domestic consumption of financial services, and that can only happen if you make it easy. Right? If you invest in fintech API, if you invest in accessibility, then only this kind of surge will happen in domestic market, and then we can grow the ecosystem. Right. Second, see, India is still ahead when it comes to fintech innovation. I mean, you can look at a lot of geographies, right? I mean, I'm not talking just about emerging market developing. I look at a lot of developed economies, right? When it comes to instant payment transfer, right? India is leading in the world, right? I'm not sure about the numbers, but I think it's leading. I mean, like far ahead than China or other countries. Right. So we are still ahead in terms of fintech innovation, and we have a good chance by taking this template out of India and going into other emerging countries which are not there yet. Right? So fintechs have a very good scope, right? And we as a Cashfree is already contemplating international expansion. Right? We are working on that plan, and I'm sure a lot of other fintechs will follow with that plan. Right? We can go into those markets and we can try to improve the ecosystem because India has been going through very fast paced digitization. Other countries are not. Right? If you look at a lot of countries, say in Middle East or someone, their penetration in e-commerce itself is very low. Right? So digitization is just started. If you look at countries, digitization is not there where we as a country are today. Right? So once fintechs get successful, it's very important to be successful in India. Once you're successful in India, once you're able to gain slightly higher skill, then it makes sense to explore international market and try to create a uniform kind of chain. Right? The advantage is, right? Suppose you are using Cashfree in India, and tomorrow you go to a different country. Right? You don't have to go and find a local player to do the same thing again. If Cashfree can just keep on using the same sort of API and service, then you can launch a service in a new market very easily. That is the comfort we can give to all the Indian businesses if we create, like fintech APIs aggregation across geography. Right now, we are just doing across institutions in India, but we should also do it across geography so that we'll enable a lot of Indian companies to go global in a very seamless and easy manner.
Noted your points, Akash, and I think that comes to an end. I'm done with my questions. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective here. And thank you so much for your taking part into the BFS Basics of Conclave. Thank you so much, Akash.
Thanks so much.